Hi, my name is Cale Bigelow. I am a professor here at Purdue University in the College of Agriculture, and I'm a turfgrass scientist. It's spring now, and so people's lawns are growing, and there's lots of questions about how to maintain a lawn. When we talk about maintaining lawns with homeowners, there's three things that they have some control over, and that would be mowing their lawn, feeding their lawn, and then potentially irrigating their lawn. One of the things I want to talk about today is the mowing aspect, because there's lots of questions about how to mow, should I do this, should I not do that? So the goal here is to give you a couple tips and tricks related to mowing your lawn. First and foremost, and you don't have to have a fancy device like this, but you can buy these online. This is called the Turf Check 2, and we actually use it sometimes in research when we're doing different types of mowing studies. Obviously, mowing is something that people do almost every single week, and it sometimes takes some time and effort depending upon the size of your lawn. And so the question is, what should you do as far as mowing heights to be as healthy as possible for your turf grass? And in general, in our climate, we're looking to have you maintain your lawn somewhere between 2.5 inches and 3 inches, okay? And so one of the other things that this is potentially helpful to for some people is we have something in our industry we call the 1/3 rule. And so with the 1/3 rule, the intent of that is to try and promote plant turf grass health, okay? And so with the 1/3 rule, you don't want to mow off more than 1/3 of the leaf blade in any one single mowing, okay? So if you're mowing, say, at 3 inches, you can allow it to grow to 4.5 inches, and that's going to be most healthy for the turf grass plant. Another thing that's really important when you're talking about mowing is your blades, okay? And this is probably something that gets overlooked by almost everybody that's a homeowner and has, other things to do outside of mowing their lawn. And ideally, you want sharp blades, okay? So if you purchased a mower, you should have 2 sets of blades, and ideally, certainly the spring of the year, you should be starting with a very sharp edge, and then probably within the first month, swap out the dull blade for the sharp blade, and you can do that as many times as you want across the season. Things happen, weather systems come in, drop branches on your lawn, and that can sometimes dull the blades, but a dull blade is not healthy for your turf grass plant. So another thing that's going to affect your mowing is that factor about feeding your lawn, okay? And so lawns need to be fed. They're biological organisms, and in general, if we can feed a lawn about 3 times a year, that's going to be best. And oftentimes when you're dealing with cool season grasses like we have here in the Midwest, is oftentimes you're going to be definitely thinking about a fall feeding. But there's also people that will feed in the spring. And so a word of caution as far as the spring feedings is be very, very careful with how much you put out, because this is naturally a time of year that plants are actively growing. And feeding leads to growth, and growth leads to more mowing. So if you are going to feed your lawn in the spring, and I would encourage people that want the high quality lawn, you should be feeding your lawn. Be very, very careful with how much you put out. So I talked a little bit about the mowing height, and ideally, for our region, if we have cool season lawns, that you want to be mowing somewhere around 2.5 to 3 inches. One of the confusing points a lot of times for people with their mowers is trying to understand, how these settings potentially affect what's happening with this. Some manufacturers are better than others as far as telling you what each of these different notches actually do, and you can find that information in the instructions for your mower. So in this situation, here it goes from 1 all the way to 4, and so I have it in this position here, which is about a 3.5 inch cutting height. And so that 3.5 inch cutting height, under most circumstances, under most growth conditions, is really going to allow you to mow once a week and not have a lot of debris on the surface. So like any technology is always moving forward. And so we've talked a little bit about mowing in this segment, and one thing I think that's pretty obvious is the robots are coming, okay? And so this is really interesting, because one of the things that's important about the robots is, unlike us going out and mowing every single week and trying to make sure that we're not taking off more than 1/3 of the leaf blade, is these mowers are actually mowing basically every day under most circumstances. And what's nice about that, it's almost like having a small grazing animal in your backyard, and they're just nibbling off a little bit of the leaf blade every single day. So this is a commercial mower, which you're seeing running in this frame, but there are ones that are moving into the residential commercial space as well.